Okay, let's go on. The last hint that is provided to us by the College Board is a reminder that the questions are scaled from easiest to hardest. The difficulty increases as you answer them in order. Reading questions, however, do not increase. In other words, the reading questions are going to follow the logic of the passage, but the sentence completion questions are going to start easy and become more difficult. Just be aware of that while you're taking the exam. Let's take a quick look at the scoring information on the SAT. How is the exam scored? You will first note that every question that you get right, you get one raw point. Raw means it's not a just yet. You will get 1 point for every correct answer. Did you get the question wrong? You are going to lose 1/4 of a point. Did you leave it blank? You will score 0 points and you will lose 0 points. What does this mean? The raw score for each section of the test, your score equals the number of questions that you answered correctly minus 1/4 of the questions you answer incorrectly. If you answer 4 questions incorrectly, it equals 1 question correctly. In other words, you can get 4 questions wrong by guessing. If you guess 1 correctly, it will even it out. Please keep in mind, the idea is to leave only a few questions blank. Try to answer as many as you can, because if you get a wrong answer, it will only cost 1/4 of a point. This means try to reduce the choices from 5 to 3, which is called narrowing down the answers. If you can get the choices from 5 to 3 by narrowing down and removing 2 of the possibilities because they obviously, clearly do not work, then you will get a good chance of an educated guess. If you have no idea what the question is talking about, no idea about the answers, you might be better off leaving it blank. Incorrect answers will not reduce your score by very much. Answer 1 correct question, it will equal 4 incorrect ones. See the following chart for a guide to how many blank answers you can consider leaving depending on your target score. Let's talk about this for a minute. What's your target score? If you are like my son Thomas and you want to go to Oxford, then you are going to need to get a very top score. If you are going to try to get a score at the very top of the range, consider answering every question. Let's look down here though. If the school you are trying to get into requires a 400 for the English for your SAT, then you may consider leaving as many as 14 to 20 blanks. In other words, always try to answer the questions that you can But if your target score is not very high, then you don't have to worry about answering every question. The target score will depend upon the requirements of the college you are trying to apply to. If you want to go to a top American school, you are going to need to get a score in one of these two ranges. That probably means that you want to try to make sure your math score is as high as you can get, because when the university considers your application, they are going to realize you are Chinese, and they are going to say, of course, his English skills, of course, her English skills are not equal to an American. Their math scores are very good. Their English scores are very good for a Chinese person, and therefore they are a very good applicant. They have a good chance of getting into the university. That's your target score. Once again, if you're trying to get a 700 or higher, you have to answer almost every question on the test. But if you're only shooting for 500, and that's why you want to check the requirements of the college you are applying to, then don't worry about answering all of the questions. You can leave many of them, perhaps as many as 10, blank. Here we go. The final section of our lesson today, and this is an important topic for us all to keep in mind. Remembering, once again, the test is made for native English speakers mostly, and therefore there are going to be many trick questions, especially on the writing section and in the reading sections. There will be only trick questions on some of the reading questions, the multiple choice, and the reading questions that refer to a long passage will not have any tricks, but they just will be difficult to understand what the correct answer is. Here's an example. On Halloween night, 5-year-old Dilbert was blank to discover that he had received more candy than ever before. Let's think about this. Halloween night, 5-year-old Dilbert has gone out trick-or-treating. He's put on his costume and went to his neighbor's house and knocked on their door and said trick or treat, and the family came and gave him some candy or something nice to eat. But Dilbert discovered, after he got home and counted and looked at all the candy he had more candy than he had ever received before. Let's see about the answers. It's Halloween night. That's a scary time. You think Dilbert was terrified? That means very scared. On Halloween night, 5-year-old Dilbert was delighted, very happy, nonplussed. You have to know a lot of vocabulary for the essay, and the more English vocabulary you can study to prepare for the SAT exam, overall, the better off you are going to be. Nonplussed is a word that means not very surprised. Distraught, another word might be difficult. It means very surprised and unhappy and uncomfortable. The last word is famished. This means very hungry. On Halloween night, 5-year-old Dilbert was, well, the answer is B. Let's take a look again. He was delighted. And let's see why that's the right answer. You might, if you had been speeding through the test, saw a sentence about Halloween, you may have just thought it was natural that he would end up terrified. You must read the questions carefully and make sure that you don't end up being tricked. Another possible trick answer, that he was famished. You might have thought that he was very hungry. There are also going to be traps, trick questions on the math. But remember, in the critical reading, only a few are going to be tricks. So try to realize that sometimes it's too easy for English speakers to be able to answer easy questions. And so the test makers, as you can see, are trying to make the SAT as difficult as they can to try to find the best English speakers. But remember, if you are Chinese, there will be a different standard applied. No one's going to expect a Chinese person to speak English at the same level as an American. You should try to do the best you can on the math. There will be no tricks on the grammar questions. Let's take an example. 61% of adults suffer from obesity. That means from being overweight. They weigh too much. But around 3,000 people die every year from diseases directly to it. Which of the best is the best way to underline the portion of sentence 2 reprinted below? Adults suffer from obesity, but around 3,000 people die every year from diseases related to it. Where do we put the comma? 61% of adults suffer from obesity, but around 3,000 people die every year. In other words, choice A is exactly the same as in this question part here. 61% of adults suffer from obesity, but around, this is an incorrect placement of the comma, 61% of adults suffer from obesity, and around 3,000 people die every year from diseases directly related to it. This is our best choice so far. 61% of adults suffer from obesity, although 3,000 people die. Although means there's a contrast between this fact, 3,000 people die every year, and this fact, 61% of people suffer from obesity. But in this case, both facts are saying the same thing, and therefore we are going to want to stick with choice C. So far, 61% of adults suffer from obesity since 3,000 people die every year. Again, since means that the second part is the cause of the first part, but that is not the relationship between the first and second part. Argument about a single conclusion. This is where we are going to want to use the word and. You have to try to figure out these tricky questions and do the best that you can on the SAT exam. Remember, some of the questions are going to be very difficult, like the ones we're looking at. You may feel, well, I just really don't know how to answer that question. If you do not know how to answer it, stay calm. Try to stay relaxed. Almost everyone has questions on the exam that they don't know how to answer. What's the best strategy? Make a small mark on your answer sheet next to the number to remind you to go back to finish that question after you answer all of the questions that you do know the answer for. The most likely questions that you will know the answer for will be the English fill-in completion questions. It's a good idea to try to go and do all of them first, or maybe you will want to try to do all of the math first after you write your essay. Are there any questions? We'll begin the final part of our first introductory lesson about the SAT. If there are any questions, again, you can feel free to type a question in the chat box, or I can turn the microphone over to you. We'll continue then. And let me just have a quick drink, please. What's a good score on the SAT? Again, here's an important question, but there's one that's not very easy to answer. My son, Thomas, is taking the hello, hee hee ha ha. Feel free. Thank you. I will continue. I'll tell you about my son Thomas. My boy is 16 years old, and he's one of the smartest students in America. He is going to take the SAT, and he is going to try to get a perfect score. He already got a perfect score on the English PSAT, and he got a perfect score on the ACT exam when he was 13. Well, for Tom, my son, a good score is going to be a perfect score. 2,400. What about for you? Are you trying to get into Stanford? Would you like to go to Princeton or Harvard, or a school that requires a really, really top score? I hope you can study hard on your English to prepare for the SAT, and that will give you the best chance of being accepted to the college that you want. An average score on the SAT for all students who take it is about 1,500 or a little bit higher. It depends on what you consider a good score. Again, what is going to be your target score? Any questions so far? Alrighty, let's continue on to the end. And it's been a good class so far. Very interesting, I hope, for you. And I appreciate your joining the class so far. The first class in the SAT course, the introduction class. And we'll talk more in a few minutes about what the rest of the SAT course will involve as well. First, let's take a look. I mentioned before about the new SAT test that will be coming in, 1016. I think someone made a mistake. There will be a new SAT test in 2016, in 2 years. Someone made a mistake here and wrote 1016, but that was a long time ago. Maybe during, well, I can't even remember how long ago that is. You all know about CNN? It's a big American television network. Well, they have put a new article online to tell people about the new SAT test that is going to be released in the spring of 2016. The new SAT test that you will be taking if you are taking the test in the next 2 years will have an emphasis on the writing. However, the new test will be reducing the emphasis on writing. There is going to be an optional essay. That means you will not have to send in an essay if you do not want. The reading section will be changed. It will be evidence-based. That means you will have to be like a policeman. They'll give you information and you have to understand the evidence and the facts to try to end what the situation really is. And I suppose the math is going to become even more difficult again. All of the math changes are very advantageous, helpful for many Chinese students who are going to do very well on the math section. So keep this in mind as you prepare for the new exam that will happen in 2 years if you need to retake the exam. If you're not satisfied with your score, of course, you can always retake the exam. Okay, are there any questions at this point? Okay, let's talk about the conclusion of our first lesson then. I'd like to thank you again for participating in the SAT course, and I hope that you find it interesting and useful. If you ever have any questions, you are welcome to contact myself or any of the management of the SAT course, SVS. Han Gao, thank you very much for allowing me to present the course. And this is the end of lesson 1. In lesson 2, we are going to we are going to examine and practice with some genuine SAT exams. Questions from former exams. Now, there are many SAT questions online that you can find, but it is always the best idea to use examples from the new SAT exam that has been introduced since 2005 by the College Board. Lessons 3 through 18, we are going to continue our SAT training, which will include grammar, vocabulary, math, writing, and reading practice to help us to prepare for the exam, which you may be taking in the very near future. This is the end of our lesson today, and hello Han Gao, how are you?